there, fellow sojourners, and welcome back to another edition of Appropriate in the Culture. On today's episode, we discuss whether it's morally permissible or not to shoot a puppy in the face. I'm Pastor Shane, and I'll be a good boy today, especially around Governor Noem, as we appropriate some culture. So South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem found herself in the doghouse after an excerpt from her upcoming book found its way into the media. According to The Guardian, quote, "Cricket was a wire hair pointer about 14 months old," the South Dakota governor writes in a new book, adding that the dog, a female, had an aggressive personality and needed to be trained to be used for hunting pheasant. What unfolds over the next few pages shows how that effort went very wrong indeed, and remarkably, how Cricket was not the only domestic animal Noem chose to kill one day in hunting season. She includes her story about the ill-fated Cricket, she says, to illustrate her willingness in politics as well in South Dakota life to do anything difficult, messy, and ugly if it simply needs to be done. By taking Cricket on a pheasant hunt with older dogs, Noem says she hoped to calm the young dog down and begin to teach her how to behave. Unfortunately, Cricket ruined the hunt, going out of her mind with excitement, chasing all those birds and having the time of her life. Noem describes calling Cricket, then using an electronic collar to attempt to bring her under control. Nothing worked. Then, on the way home after the hunt, as Noem stopped to talk to a local family, Cricket escaped Noem's truck and attacked the family's chickens, grabbing one chicken at a time, crunching it to death with one bite, then dropping it to attack another. Cricket, the untrained dog, Noem writes, behaved like a trained assassin. When Noem finally grabbed Cricket, she says the dog whipped around to bite me. Then, as the chicken's owner wept, Noem repeatedly apologized, wrote the shocked family a check for the price they asked, and helped them dispose of the carcasses littering the scene of the crime. Through it all, Noem says Cricket was the picture of pure joy. "I hated that dog," Noem writes, adding that Cricket had proved herself untrainable, dangerous to anyone she came in contact with, and less than worthless as a hunting dog. At that moment, Noem says, "I realized I had to put her down." Noem, who also represented her state in Congress for 8 years, got her gun, then led Cricket to a gravel pit. "It was not a pleasant job," she writes, "but it had to be done. And after it was over, I realized another unpleasant job needed to be done." Her family, she writes, also owned a male goat that was nasty and mean because it had been castrated. Furthermore, the goat smelled disgusting, musky, rancid, and loved to chase Noem's children, knocking them down and ruining their clothes. Noem decided to kill the unnamed goat the same way she had just killed Cricket the dog. But though she dragged him to a gravel pit, the goat jumped as she shot and therefore survived the wound. Noem says she went back to her truck, retrieved another shell, then hurried back to the gravel pit and put him down. And the internet lost its ever-loving mind. Not about the killing of the goat, because who cares about goats? We're all specious. We have unquestionable bias and favoritism for some species over others. And the governor killed one of our most beloved species. And people on the right and left expressed their outrage. Here's Fox News.
What? I have 4 rescues, and I have a puppy. I got to tell you, what she's done is she's sabotaged herself, whether or not it was to, buttress what was coming down the road. But she also managed to unite the right and the left, because America, if nothing else, we are dog lovers. And don't tell me you shot a pup because it wasn't used to hunting. Maybe you're not a good teacher. Yeah. Maybe there's a problem. And this whole thing with the chickens, were the chickens dead? Was your dog on their property? Should you have had your dog on a leash? Should your farm have been fenced? I could go on and on because I love dogs.
And here's The View.
Both sides of the aisle do not agree on much right now, but they have been united in outrage over South Dakota's Governor Kristi Noem's confession that she shot her 14-month-old puppy dog dead because she couldn't train it. Give it back, bitch, give it back. Why are you gonna kill it? And she says it killed her neighbor's chickens. She defended herself, though. She claimed that it was tough decisions like this that happen on farms all the time, and that she followed the law and was being a responsible parent, dog owner, and neighbor.
Nah. Which part was the parenting part?
I'm keeping this to myself. I'm going to let y'all talk about it. What is your opinion on such things? I'll start with you, with the baby dog.
Literally, who's just over 14 months.
Yeah.
This is a puppy. If your dog is acting wrongly, it's because you were incompetent at training that dog. And I grew up, we had big dogs and we had chickens. And the dog did once get a chicken. Whose fault was it? Mine, for not having the dog somewhere where he couldn't get the chickens. But then what do? You train them. And by the way, if you have a really challenging dog, there are countless organizations to rehome them to somebody who loves the dog enough. I want justice for Cricket. It's terrible.
It's a terrible thing. And you know,
That was the dog's name.
Oh,
by the way.
Cricket's the dog.
Dog's name was Cricket. You know, a sign of a sociopath is someone that kills animals. I'm not a clinician, but she killed her animal. And what was interesting to me is she
also
said
killed a goat, Sonny.
she killed the
she's
goat.
coming to that.
She killed the goat as well.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me is she said something like, you know, he's what did she say? Untrainable.
She hated him.
He's a
hated him.
he's a hunting dog, and he was hunting pheasants and killed chickens. That's what she wanted the dog to do, yet she kills the dog. And I shout out to all of those animal rescues that are out there that would have taken Cricket and loved Cricket. Shout out to Austin Sime's rescue, Sally's rescue, Footbridge Foundation. You know why I know all of them? Because I work with all of them. It is very important for people to understand that sometimes dogs, they are like your children.
Yeah.
They are your fur babies. And it is despicable that she not only did this, she wrote about it and is defending it. And I am afraid that the rumor is that Trump will pick her as his vice president.
Well, you know what?
Yes, there are fur babies, not our actual babies. Those we rip apart limb by limb when they're in the womb, which everyone around that table fully supports. Would it be more acceptable if we found out that Cricket had Down syndrome? And they're wondering, how is this an example of good parenting? Gee, I don't know. Maybe because she had young children and this dog had been violent, aggressive, wild, and tried to bite her? My wife, when she was little, was viciously mauled by a dog. It's literally a miracle that she survived. Dogs have killed children many, many times. Around 50 people a year in this country are killed by dogs, and that's just killed, not counting the severely injured or mutilated, which is a good deal more. So 20 years ago, Kristi Noem had a dog, which was not the only dog she had, but unlike the other dogs, this dog was particularly unruly and violent. It killed livestock, caused property damage, and so she decided to put it down. And? That seems pretty responsible to me. Oh, but you say, the dog acted that way because it's poorly trained. She's a bad trainer. Okay, she's a bad trainer. So which is better? Is it better for her children, for her neighbors, for the community, if the bad trainer puts down a dog they don't know how to properly train? Or is it better for her children, for the neighbors, for the community, to have a poorly trained dog with a history of violence and aggression continuing to roam the area? But that's a false dichotomy. She could have brought in a professional trainer. She could have given the dog away to a loving family with no small children. I'm not saying it's the only answer. I'm saying contrary to what the shrieking dog lovers are bellowing, her choice was not the worst choice. Putting the dog down is a better choice than letting an untrained, violent animal roam. Given what she knew about this animal, she is morally culpable, both in our law and in the law God gave to the Israelites. It says in Exodus, "If a bull gores a man or woman to death, the bull is to be stoned to death, and its meat must not be eaten. But the owner of the bull will not be held responsible. If, however, the bull has had the habit of goring, and the owner has been warned but has not kept it pinned up, and it kills a man or woman, the bull is to be stoned, and its owner also is to be put to death." There's culpability. So she responded by putting down this animal that she felt was not properly domesticated or suitable for a pet. And it's a dog. It's her dog, not your dog. There's a different moral complexion when it comes to someone else's property. We see that in Scripture. If you see the donkey of someone who hates you fallen down under its load, do not leave it there. Be sure you help them with it. But that's a concern that is principally directed at a fellow human being. That's not to mean that we're not to be good stewards of creation that we've been entrusted to rule over. And in Scripture, we see certain consideration given to animals, an obligation that we have to not be unnecessarily cruel. It says things like, if you come across a bird's nest beside the row, either in a tree or on the ground, and the mother is sitting on the young or on the eggs, do not take the mother with the young. You may take the young, but be sure to let the mother go, so that it may go well with you and you may have a long life. And it certainly is an indicator of a certain psychosis for people to torture and wantonly kill animals. But you know what else is psychotic? Valuing animals over human beings. And that seems to be where we are as a people. According to a psychological survey, 40% of people who participated in that research study said that given the choice, they would save their own pet over a stranger. Almost half the people said they would save an animal over a human being. The unhinged response to this dog story is really indicative of a profound moral sickness rampant in our culture. Fewer and fewer people are having children. Instead, they're fulfilling their nurturing needs with pets. Because it's their fur babies. I mean, my goodness, just listen to the way that people talk about their pets. Adoption. Oh, we adopted. This is our adopted dog. Oh, wow, adopted. I had no idea. They look so much like you. You got a dog. That's what you did. You acquired a dog. It's a dog, not a person. And an inability to make that distinction is a moral failing. Jesus said, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." Kristi Noem killed a dog. Her dog, not your dog. A violent, aggressive dog that had just killed chickens. So, is there a moral problem there? We kill dogs all the time. 359,000 dogs were euthanized last year according to Shelter Animals Count. And that's not because they were violent or aggressive, but just because of overcrowding. But supposedly, Kristi Noem is a monster for what? Cutting out the middleman? It's a dog. It's an animal. And we used to have a sense of this. Here's a clip from Tom and Jerry, a child's cartoon.
Fluff, muff, and puff.
That's a wet bag of kittens in cat heaven. Why is that in a kid's cartoon? Because in those days, it wasn't that uncommon for people to take unwanted kittens, tie them in a bag, and throw them in the river as a form of population control. Which is why old-timers like Bob Barker were telling us to spay and neuter our pets as a means of being more humane. And that's fine, we ought to be good stewards. I like dogs, I have a dog, I love my dog. But we've gotten to the point where we are so morally sick that we can't make proper distinctions. Here's an example from Psychology Today highlighting a book from Joan Danier. In her book, Speciesism, she proposes a different approach to solving tough moral issues involving animals. She says that when faced with rescuing a child or a dog from death by fire, you should reach in your pocket for a quarter and flip the coin. After all, Danier argues, the child and the dog have the same moral value. The outrage over the killing of a dog is meant to be a moral clarion call, but the truth is it actually reveals how morally twisted we are. But here's what Jesus seems to care about. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Jesus saves one person at the expense of 2,000 pigs. Oh, but what if it were 2,000 puppies? Well, that's it for today. If you like what we're doing here, like, subscribe, share, tell a friend, buy my latest book, 6 Rounds for the Witching Hour, leave a 5-star review, follow me on the major socials, join my author's Facebook page, and I'll see you next time for more Appropriating the Culture.